As we embark on the Great Canadian Farm Tour, it is important to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of Indigenous peoples. Agriculture in the Classroom Canada recognizes and honors the enduring presence of the diverse Indigenous communities across Canada, including the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We acknowledge the deep connection that Indigenous peoples have to the land, waters, resources, and all of agriculture. We express our gratitude for their stewardship and custodianship of these lands for generations. Agriculture in the Classroom Canada recognizes that acknowledging the traditional territories we reside and work on is only a small step towards reconciliation. We ask that we all continue to learn more about the Indigenous peoples in these regions, to consider the history and ongoing colonialism on this land, to reflect on how each of us can contribute to reconciliation. Hello, bonjour. Welcome everyone to our next stop on Season 3 of the Great Canadian Farm Tour. We are so excited to have everyone join us today from across Canada. My name is Mercedes Unwin from Agriculture in the Classroom Canada, and I'll be your MC for today. Before we get started, we just wanted to provide a few reminders. For those who want to follow along in French, please use the Interprify link provided in the chat to access the interpreting and closed captioning services provided for this event. We ask that everyone is mindful this is an educational event, so inappropriate conduct happening in the chat, such as spamming and improper comments, will not be tolerated. Throughout the tour, we welcome you to post your questions in the chat to get them answered. We will answer as many questions as possible. The mystery word for your student activity books will appear at the end of this episode, so please stick around to see it. Finally, we would love to know where everyone is joining us from. Please comment in the chat your school and location. Now we would like to welcome one of our next tour hosts of the Great Canadian Farm Tour, Samia, who's the acting manager of the Research Center in Saskatchewan. Hello, Samia.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depends where you are in Canada.
So thank you, Samia, for joining us today. Samia, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well as some of the researchers who are joining us today from the Research Center in Saskatchewan?
I am Samia, and I am acting associate director at the Swift Current Research and Development Center. Swift Current Research and Development Center is an AFC research center, and it is one of the 20 research centers across Canada. We are located in the province of Saskatchewan, in the southwest Saskatchewan, and we do great science in here. We are around like 20, we have around 20 scientists. We work on forages, on cereals, on soil, on livestock. So it is exciting to have everyone here today to follow us.
Yes, it's great to have you. And we're going to be joined by, I believe, let me just quickly count, 1, 2, 3. And then with you is a team of 3, and then 2. So I believe a team of 8 scientists are joining us today.
Correct.
So we're going to learn a little bit more about them and their areas of expertise throughout the tour. So today is a really unique tour in the sense we're covering 3 different topics or research areas. So we're doing soils, forage, and livestock, and durum wheat, which is your area of expertise, right, Samia?
Yes, right, with my team in here.
Okay, wonderful. So what we'll do is get started, and we're going to provide an opportunity for everyone to ask questions after we engage with every research team. So
Please.
we'll see you soon, Samia. So for our first segment, we will be joined by Barbara and Mervyn. So let's bring Barbara and Mervyn up on the screen. Hi to you both. So welcome to you both. It's great to have you. What we'll do is get started by watching a video around soils, and then we'll learn a little bit more from the both of you. So see you in a little bit, Barbara and Mervyn.
Hello, my name is Dr. Mervyn Santos, and I'm a research scientist in soil fertility and cropping systems. Today I would like to talk with you about soils. Healthy soils are vital for our survival. More than 90% of the food that we grow and eat comes from soils, as soils provide the essential nutrients, water, oxygen, and support that plants require to grow and produce food. Soils are also important for air and water quality, for fighting climate change, and for the construction of bridges, roads, and buildings. So properly managing our soils and improving and maintaining their health is very important. So what is soil? Soil is a mixture of minerals, organic matter, water, gases, and living organisms. So yes, soil is a living, breathing thing, and soil is not dirt. Soils have many different properties, which can be divided into three main groups: physical, chemical, and biological properties. One of the first things that you see when you look at soils is color. Soil color is an example of a physical property, and soil colors can range from light gray, brown, black, red, and many colors in between. Another soil physical property is texture. Soil minerals are made up of sand, silt, and clay particles. Each of these particles has a different feel, from grainy or gritty for sand, like what you feel on the beach, to fine and powdery for clay. Examples of soil chemical properties include pH, nutrient content, and organic matter content, which is mostly made up of dead plant materials. Bacteria, fungi, and other organisms living in the soil make up the soil biological properties. In my work, I focus a lot on nitrogen. Nitrogen is the most important nutrient for plant growth. The green leaves that you see in plants is related to how much nitrogen the plants contain. Nitrogen is also important for the creation of proteins that we get when we eat certain foods like peas, beans, cereal grains, meat or fish for healthy and strong bodies. Plants get most of the nitrogen from the soil. However, sometimes we need to add nitrogen by applying fertilizer and animal manures to the soil to ensure that plants have enough nutrients to grow and produce food. If we apply too much nitrogen, some of it can be lost from the soil and cause air and water pollution. Therefore, we need to apply the 4 R's. That is, the right amount, at the right time, in the right place, and using the right source. To help us with this decision, we take a soil sample from the field and test it in the laboratory to know how much plant available nitrogen the soil contains. Then we take the amount that the plant needs and subtract the amount in the soil, and the difference is how much we need to apply.
Hi, I'm Dr. Barbara King, and I'm a nutrient scientist. My research covers both soil and water, and I also study different properties from Dr. Cycles. One of the soil properties that I study is pH. pH measures the activity of hydrogen ions, and it is a logarithmic scale that goes from 1 to 14. 7 in the middle is neutral, and that's things like drinking water. Below 7 is acid, so 7 down to 1, and that is things like lemon juice. And from above 7 up to 14 is what we call alkaline or basic, and that includes things like baking soda and also soap, which is quite alkaline. In soils, pH ranges from 4 to 8. Soil pH is a really important property because it affects affects a lot of different things. One thing that it affects is biology, because a lot of organisms have very strict pH ranges in which they can live. PH also affects the cycling of a lot of nutrients. For example, phosphorus, you can see, has a very distinctive peak around 6 and is much lower at both high and low pH, whereas things like nitrogen increase with increasing pH. In a lab like mine, we measure pH by taking soil and putting it in, adding water or calcium chloride. Then we stir it really well and let it sit for a while. Once the soil particles have settled down, use a pH meter. We put that into the water that sits above the soil, and that gives us a pH reading. For the case of this soil, the pH is 7.77, which means it's an alkaline soil. The other thing I study is phosphorus. Phosphorus is an element like nitrogen, Dr. Singles talked about. It's essential for all organisms. It's part of your bones, it's part of your teeth, it's part of your DNA, it's part of your cells. When plants don't get enough phosphorus, they develop deficiencies in it, just don't grow properly. So we have to add fertilizer. However, if there's too much phosphorus and it moves from land to water, we have problems with water quality. So we try to be careful and use just the right amount of phosphorus so our plants grow well. We measure phosphorus in a lot of different ways, but one of the main things we do is we extract it. So we take soil, we add a reagent like water, we shake it really well, and then we filter it. We then take the liquid that comes out after filtering and we measure it. And for phosphorus, it's a color reaction where the amount of phosphorus is measured with a blue color. So the more blue it is, the more phosphorus it is. So that particular sample is here. And so what we can do is match it up and we can say that there's approximately 1 milligram per liter of phosphorus.
Oh, well, that was so interesting to learn so much about soil and what you both do. Before we get started, I thought maybe we could get a little bit more about your background. So maybe let's start with you, Barbara. Could you tell us a little bit more about your background and area of expertise and how you got into this?
Well, I grew up in British Columbia, central British Columbia, in Merritt, and I initially started going to school to be a doctor, and then I worked for a summer as a summer student at Agriculture Canada, and it got me interested in agriculture. And then I initially was more with microbes, but then I realized that for phosphorus, there's both microbial and chemical work. So I have a master's degree in biology and a PhD in chemistry so that I can study both aspects of phosphorus cycling.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, Barbara. And Mervyn, how did you get into this position, and what's your background and area of expertise? Oh, we can't hear you, Mervyn. Let's just see. We're just having a couple technical difficulties. Give us a moment. Well, while we're waiting for Mervyn, just to kind of do a little bit of troubleshooting, why don't we just pull up a question and maybe Barbara can answer to it. And then we'll circle back with Mervyn. So, Barbara, this is a question from Miss Torson's class, grade 3 to 4. We are wondering which type of soil plants will grow best in.
Well, it depends on the type of plant. I mean, a good, what we call loam soil, so not too sandy, not too clay, with a nice balance of everything is usually best. But there are things like, for example, cranberries, like in acidic soil, it's usually fairly wet and with a lot of organic matter. Forest soil is quite different than what you're going to see for agriculture.
Wonderful. Thanks for answering that question. I think I heard Mervyn's mic is now working, so we'll circle back to him.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're perfect. So,
Okay.
Mervyn, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yes, so I grew up in the Commonwealth of Dominica, tiny island in the Caribbean. And I will admit agriculture was not my first choice. I actually wanted to be a marine biologist. I'm from an island. But then I started practicing growing vegetables in the backyard with my mom and my grandparents. So that kind of intrigued my interest, especially looking at how plants grew and the importance of soil. So that's how my interest really started.
Okay, wonderful. It's great to learn a little bit more both about you. So there's a whole plethora of questions from students across Canada. They love to learn more about soils. So let's pop up another question. We'll just dive deep into these questions. So our next question from Maxon wants to know why soil is different colors.
Okay, so there are many reasons why. One could be, so example in PEI, Prince Edward Island, the soils are red because of iron. So basically it's like rust. Here in the prairies, you have dark soils because there's more organic material. So you have bigger trees, forests. In the dry area where we are in southwest Saskatchewan is dry. So there's less trees, less plant biomass going into the soil, less rainfall. So the soils are normally brown, light brown to brown. Then you go a little further west, they're a little darker brown because you have more precipitation. So generally in the prairies, the color goes by a precipitation gradient. You go from dry to moist, and the color goes from brown to even gray, a dark gray. So they are mostly related to parent material, how much trees, the size of the trees, as well as precipitation.
Well, there's definitely so much to learn and know about soil. So let's just dive into another question from students just to expand all of our knowledge. Gordon would like to know how many types of soil there is.
Countless.
Lots and lots. In Canada, I think we have 12 different classification systems, and even within each of those, there's subgroups. But then if you go to other countries, for example, we don't have tropical soils in Canada because, frankly, it's not that warm. But so places where the tropics, like the US or Africa, have different soils again. So, yeah, there are many, 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 many.
Yep.
Wonderful. And then let's just round out and we'll do one more question for our soils team, and then we'll move on to our livestock and forage team. So our final question focused on soils for today is, Ben wonders why some soil we buy has little white spots in it.
That's usually something that's added when you buy commercial soils in a bag. They have different things added to them, so that's often
Normally it's like peat moss,
peat moss
and some other
perlite.
stuff, perlite to hold moisture, to aerate the whatever mixture that they have, but those are not really soil, really. So
Okay, well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So we're going to say goodbye to both of you and thank you for your time. And then we're going to move on
thank you.
to be joined by Sean and Kilu. They're going to focus on the topic on forage and livestock. So hi to both of you. And thank you for joining us today. So we're going to get started and we're going to dive straight into that video, and then we'll come back and then have both of you tell us a little bit more about yourselves while we go into afterwards with questions from students all across Canada. So see you in a few moments.
Hi there, my name is Dr. Sean Aslay. I'm a plant breeder and I work on integrating native plants into agriculture. These are wild plants that are hard to grow and I make them easier to work with. So this is how this process works. Think of like a big box of crayons with different colors, red, yellow, and blue. Now think of these plants like different crayons. Just like you mix different colors of crayons together to create new colors, scientists like me take plants and mix them together to create new plants. So here's how that works. Scientists like me pick two plants with special traits they like. Maybe one plant doesn't need a lot of water to grow, another is tasty to cows. These traits are like the colors of the crayons. I bring these plants together and let them share their traits. It's like mixing the red and blue crayons to get purple. We want to make the plant that is the best of both parents. After mixing the traits, we grow out new plants from the seeds of these special parents. These new plants might look a little different from their parents because they have a mixture of traits from both. We keep growing and testing these new plants to see which ones have the best mix of traits. We look for plants that are easier to grow, need less water, or taste better. If we find a really good new plant, we use it as a parent for more breeding. We keep improving plants this way to make them even better. So plant breeding is like mixing crayons to create new colors. Instead of crayons, we mix different plants to create new kinds of plants with special traits.
How Hello there, my name is Dr. Akiro. I am a research scientist at the Swift Current Research Center, and I am a ruminant nutritionist. My research program focuses on what animals eat and see the impact on animal health, growth, and productivity. For our research, we work with cows, and as you know, cows has different digestive system with 4 different compartments, and the biggest called rumen. Ruminant animals has a capacity to digest, fibrous feed, including hay like this. So, as part of our research, we do manage this type of animals, which is called fistulated animals, where we have access to the inside digestive system to do different research. One would be evaluating how much this kind of hay is digested in there. The other part of our research is focusing on not only how much the animals are eating, but how much they are growing, how much they are producing. So this is part of that, where we feed growing calves different type of feed in here. In this case, it's just grassy. Yeah. So there is an active study going on here where we feed animals a protein supplement. In this case, it is a canola meal pellet. And we want to see how much impact it has on animal performance. So we have different treatments, as you can see. There is 4 treatments in this pane, where we put 15 growing steers and then feed them in a different feeding frequency. This is the canola meal pellet that this experimental group is getting. On top of that, we're feeding them a little bit of barley grain as well to give them some energy. So the other part of our research is studying the impact of animal on environment, and we do use different technologies to test that. One is called a green feed system. You can see it here. That we measure methane from animal. So as you know, methane is one of the greenhouse gas that animals produce. What this machine does is that it captures methane emission from individual animals, and when the animals comes in, there is a bait that we put in there to keep the animals for at least 3 minutes, so that we'll get enough data from each animal. For our research purpose, we do use cow calf as well. And as you can see, these are newborn calves last month that will grow and wean and go for the feeding trial that we do at the center as well.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing so much information about what you both research and do. Before we dive into some questions, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about yourselves and how did you get into this role with the research facility? So we'll start with Sean.
Okay, so myself, I grew up in Winnipeg, and when I went to university, I started taking a bunch of different classes to kind of see what I wanted to study, and those included biology and anthropology. And actually, through my anthropology classes, I learned about the process of plant domestication. So I was taking a wild plant and making it into a domesticated plant. And that's what really got me interested in plant breeding. And eventually I went off to do a master's and a PhD at the University of Manitoba, both in plant breeding and genetics. And from there, I joined Agricultural Agri-Food Canada.
Wonderful. Such an interesting pathway you took. And Akilu, what took you forward in terms of your pathway and how you got here?
So for me, I grew up in Ethiopia, Africa, in a small farm. So I've been working with animals since a young age, and I did my undergrad back there. I came to Canada to do my master's in animal nutrition and PhD in modeling and systems analysis. So yeah, the interest was working with animal is kind of from the young age.
Okay. Well, it's so interesting how both of you took different pathways to get here. And it seems that no matter what, I would say is no matter what your background is, you can find a space in agriculture, I think is a great takeaway from so far from everyone we heard from today. So let's get started with some student questions from across Canada. So we'll pop up the first one and then we'll get started. So Wyatt is wondering if the cows with the holes in them stay just as healthy as the other cows, and how long do they have to have this hole in them?
So those animals are experimental animals, as I stated in that video. So we do have four animals at our station for a specific lab experiment. So having that hole doesn't impact the animal in terms of health and productivity. So the animals are healthy, but we use them for experiments. So there is, except having that hole on the side, that we have access to, the inside of the rumen part. The animals are, functioning as the other animals we have. So we maintain them as long as they grow and as long as we need them for the experiment.
And then I think a great thing to add, Akilu, correct me if I'm wrong, is that as a scientist and as experiments, you have to follow every level of expectation set out to yourselves by the government and from every respective national body that asks you to meet certain requirements to ensure the health and well-being of the animal, correct?
That's right. So there is an animal care committee at the at the center, at the local and the federal level. So there is a guideline that we need to follow in terms of using those animals in different experiments. Yeah.
Well, thank you for telling us so much about that and the expectations you set on yourselves as scientists to ensure that you're meeting the standards and level of care needed when running experiments. Let's pull up a next question. Do you make new plants for humans to eat, like combining different types of berries? So this is a question most likely for Sean.
Yeah, actually we do. So that's a process. If we take two different types of plant species, like two different types of berries, and if they can reproduce, we call it hybridization. And we can create actually new species of plants if they're compatible that way. So 100%, yeah, we do create new types of foods for humans. I work with animal foods, but we do have plant breeders that work on a whole variety of different foods, a whole variety of different species.
Wonderful. What a great question. And we'll do one more question because we have to make sure we make time for everyone to speak to every researcher on the team. So our last question from a student today for both of you is Charlotte wants to know, how long have you been studying this area of farming?
So me, I really started in 2009. So it's been about 15 years now.
I think me, I started in 2003. So it's been a while.
Yes, and I'm sure there's more things you want to accomplish in the next few years coming up. So I just want to say thank you to both of you today. And then next, we're going to be joined by Ruan, Marlon, and Samia, who will tell us more about durum wheat. So I'm just going to say hello to both of you right now. And then before we jump into our video, we're going to do a brief commercial break. So Ruan, Marlon, Samuel will join us back in 1 minute, and then we'll get started learning more about durum wheat. So see you all in a few minutes. Okay, we're back, and we're going to jump right into our final video around durum wheat, and then we're going to get started with some great questions for the durum wheat team. So let's dive right in there.
Hi everyone, this is durum wheat breeding team in AITC-SK Current. We are glad today be here to introduce you about durum wheat breeding program. I'm Dr. Yue Feng Luan, durum wheat breeder.
I am Marlon Wolford, the senior durum breeding technician.
I'm Samia Berraies, the wheat pathologist.
What is a durum? Durum is a way to make a pasta. For example, spaghetti. My job to choose desirable, healthy plants to make a cross. For example, this is one plant. Here is another plant to make a cross for next generation plants.
After Dr. Ruan decides on desirable parents for a cross, he gives those to me. I go and find the seed and I plant them in the growth rooms. So after the plants in the growth rooms are to a desirable size and maturity, we take the female plant, which would be inside this bag. We remove all of the male parts of the plant to make this a female. And then at the desired time, we would introduce another head, which would be the male plant, and put the male parts of that plant with this female, developing new seed and a new line. After the cross is made between these two parents and the plant produces the seed that we want, this seed is taken into the greenhouse and increased, getting ready for its next journey out to the field. After the seeds are mature in the growth rooms after the crossing, they come here to be increased before they head to the field. But even at this first generation, we are selecting plants for the desired characteristics like we talked about before, and the ones that are missing have been pulled out already. So what is left is what we are looking for.
I am the pathologist, wheat pathologist, which means like the doctor for wheat. I make sure that the wheat is not ill, does not have any diseases. As you can see here, when we do all our breeding and develop new varieties, we cannot have a wheat like this, having disease. This disease is called ergot. My job is to make sure that we don't have such disease in our new varieties, because such disease will make the end product, which is the macaroni, the spaghetti, not healthy. You cannot eat them. Here in Saskatchewan, we develop the wheat varieties, the durum wheat varieties that cover almost 50% of the international market. So from this program, from this greenhouse, from this center, you will have I am sure that whatever pasta you had, spaghetti, it came from this program. So if it's good, it's because we are working to make it look good and then being healthy and not having any diseases. Here you can see over the years, starting 1971 to 2022, the latest, this is the achievement and the success of the program, developing several varieties. Some of them, they cover the majority of the durum wheat acreages in Saskatchewan and the prairies.
As a durum wheat breeding team, we have 3 people, clients that we want to please. The farmers that grow our durum that we produce so they can make money in what they do and keep them viable. The pasta companies that produce the pasta that you eat, they need to make money as well and survive. And most importantly, it's you, the consumers, that eat the pasta that we produce. We want you to have something that is nutritious and healthy to eat, here in Canada and worldwide.
Thank you.
The Durum team, outstanding in the field.
Wow, wonderful. Thanks for sharing so much more about durum and the durum wheat that's produced in Saskatchewan and the work that you and your team do. I was wondering if we could get started with, similar to everyone else, telling each one of you, telling us a little bit about yourselves and how you came to be at the research center. So we'll start with Samia.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I born and raised in Tunisia, North Africa, and what made me work with wheat and pathology is because I love pasta. So all I wanted is like wheat all over and doesn't have any diseases, so we can make more pasta. And that made me come from North Africa to Saskatchewan, that I call the breadbasket of Canada and the world. So I love wheat and I love pathology. Love pathology, love making wheat looks good and not unhealthy.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. And then we'll move on to Marlon. How did you get here?
I grew up on a farm close to the research station here. So while I was going to university, it just seemed logical that I would be a summer student working here. And while working here, I just realized the value that it has to the farmers around here and to all the consumers that we serve to produce healthy pasta as well as bread wheat.
Wonderful. And then last but not least, our final member of the durum wheat team, Dr. Wong. What brought you here?
I moved to Canada 25 years ago from China. When I was young in China, my grandparents was running a farm, small farm. Every summer I visit them. I enjoy work with them together in the field with the plants. So that got into me, started interest to work on the plant. So that's I start my career. So.
Okay. Well, such interesting stories and how everybody navigated and took different pathways to be here today. So we're going to dive into some questions, and we have time for a couple, and then we'll kind of finish off our day together. So our first question from students across Canada, Scarlett would like to know about how long it takes to come up with a final breed that you're happy with. Anybody want to get started? Anybody jump in?
Sure, yeah. For reading, we start carsing, shoot the video. Usually take about 12 years, start from beginning to commercialize the stage. So that means commercialize, that means farmer, everyone can grow that variety. So 12 years.
Well, such a long period of time, but I'm sure those 12 years are really necessary to do the research and the level of testing you need to do to make sure that it is consumable for anybody who wants to eat the pasta. So really, I'm sure you dedicate that time to make sure the end product is the healthiest product possible. We'll move on to our next question. Rayleigh wants to know, what is your favorite type of pasta?
Oh, I just love all kinds of pasta. Spaghetti, I have like little weakness for spaghetti. I can eat it every day. But pasta, everything, I love it.
I would have to say fettuccine is my favorite.
I would say I like all kind of pasta.
I love that. What a great question. And there's so many great varieties, and it's made possible through the fact that we grow such great durum wheat. So our last question for today. Eric is wondering if you grow entire crops of the new plants you breed or just small amounts.
To start with, we don't have a lot of seed available, so it has to be increased. And as we get more and more seed, then it goes out to farmers to grow at a bigger field type growing. So start small and gets bigger as we get more and more seed.
Wonderful. That is also a great question. So we're now at the end of our episode. Samia, are there any final words you'd like to share for you and your team? And we'll bring everybody back right now.
Yeah, so thank you so much for organizing this. My team, wheat team, and all the team of the Swift Current Research and Development Center doing great science. We contribute to the farming community. We contribute to production of healthy and nutritious product. We are excited to share this with you today, with all the students today that joined us from all over Canada. We hope to have everyone, why not one day, here to see what we do in our labs, to visit our fields and to see how we make things, how we realize them, and to visit our center. So thank you so much for this. Thank you today.
It was great having all of you because all of you have such unique areas of expertise and projects that you work on. So we got to learn about so much today with all of you. So thank you. And before we kind of roll out, I just want to show one last video which showed the exterior of the research facility so everybody can see the location of where all this work is being done. So we'll just throw up that video right now, and then we can see what this research center looks like. So a lot of great work's being done here, and we appreciate all of you for all of that. And so before we close off this episode, and thank you to everyone for waiting patiently, I'm excited to share the mystery word for today is pathways, or les parcours. So I think that's a very good word for this tour because we learned about so many different pathways. So thank you again for joining us on this episode of the Great Canadian Farm Tour. Our next stop and final stop will be next week on May 30th at 11:30 Eastern Daylight Time at a cricket farm in Manitoba. So let's just say goodbye for now. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.